What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. And the New York Rangers are in the offseason right now. It's a little bit dry. They're just kind of conducting their list, starting to figure out who is going to be the next head coach. And of course, that's the main point of attention for the New York Rangers right now. Their main task at hand is to find that next head coach. But looking ahead off in the distance to the upcoming 2023 season, the Rangers are going to have some open opportunities on their roster. They can't re-sign all of their players. They're going to have to say goodbye to some of their players on the roster right now in free agency, but they do need to make some replacements with the minimal amount of money that they have. So they might have to call upon OHL member Brennan Othmann, a prospect here, to rise up to the occasion, get called up into the NHL, and maybe take on one of those roles in the starting lineup. So today, we're going to go ahead and discuss, should the Rangers call up Brennan Othmann? What could he bring to the team? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? And how great of a season did he just have in the OHL? But before we dive into all of that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. But without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Rangers potentially calling up Brennan Othmann next season?
I'm doing pretty good. We're in the off season for the Rangers at least, and it is a little boring right now where we're kind of just figuring out like what changes need to be made to the roster and the coaching and the management heading into next season. And you're right, absolutely. A lot of the players that we had this season are probably not going to be around going into next season. I know a recent report has said that Patrick Kane's projected new contract is looking around 3 years at $5.75 million. Can the Rangers make that happen? Probably not. And even if we could, would we want to? I would also say probably not. And, the same thing kind of goes for Tarasenko and a couple of other guys up there on the forward core. So there are going to be a couple of open spots. And with the lack of cap space that the Rangers do have, there's not really many free agents out there that we can really work with to try to sign to boost this roster. And as we've been saying, the best way to develop this team and fill in those holes is to look from within the organization. And I think when it comes to all of the prospects that the Rangers have, the top dog is easily Brennan Othmann. He excelled like amazingly just this past season in the OHL, which he split between two teams. The Flint Firebirds only played 16 games with them for 11 goals, 13 assists, and 24 points, which over a point per game is pretty good there. Until he was traded to the Peterborough Petes, where he finished off the season with 40 games played, 18 goals, 25 assists, and 43 points. So throughout the regular season in the OHL, he played amazing. And then, we know what's been going on throughout the OHL playoffs, where he helped lead the Peterborough Petes to winning their first OHL championship in a very long time, which he also had over a point per game in those playoffs at 8 goals, 17 assists, and 25 points in just 23 games played. So we'll see what happens in the coming days, weeks, as he tries to lead the Petes to their first Memorial Cup victory in a while. It's about time that trophy gets brought back to the OHL, but he's been pretty good, and I definitely think there's opportunities to see him on the Rangers.
Yeah, and to provide more context to fans who maybe do not know why Brennan Othmann was traded midway through the OHL season, he actually did request the trade, and he had some valid reasons why. I will go ahead and read through some of his quotes, paraphrase them, and give you the info on that. Peterborough came to mind because it was close to home, and I knew a few players on the team that I am close to. It's been a fun couple of days trying to get organized. That's what he said after the trade. And he said, I never turned to social media, but I woke up this morning as a former Firebird and a new Pete's, so I felt like I should thank both fan bases. I have two grandparents that are struggling with health issues, and being closer to home to be with family is what makes sense to me at the moment. I hope fans can understand that. So that is ultimately the reason why he requested the trade and was traded, so that he could be closer to family. And of course, as you just mentioned, Eric, he went on to go have this awesome run into the postseason with the Petes. 40 games played, 43 total points, as you mentioned, over a point per game. And now in the championship, won the championship, all of that kind of stuff. He's currently playing for the Memorial Cup, but this is from Forever Blue Shirts. They said, quote, the Rangers are expected to give Othmann a serious look at training camp for the 2023 to 24 season, end quote there. So We know that the Rangers are really high on Othmann. I know a lot of fans are as well. He was absolutely lighting it up in the OHL this year. And even before the Rangers made their final roster decision, we did talk about him briefly as being a potential dark horse candidate to make the final roster. We said maybe he does make it on the fourth line somehow, but they couldn't bring him up. They had to send him down to the OHL. And because he was under 20, there was that whole weird thing with his age and the contract. He couldn't be called up mid-season, had to go spend the year in the OHL. And now, going into this year, the Rangers may want to consider putting him on that fourth line. And I do think that, young left winger, lots of potential, has really flashed it several times here, especially in the OHL. But even last year when he was in training camp, practicing with the Rangers, looked like a really good player. He came to play. He was turning heads while playing against the Rangers' main starters in training camp last year. And now as we creep into this offseason, we think about the upcoming training camp period and the upcoming roster deadline period, I do think that this is a guy that the Rangers need to give strong consideration to. But Eric, just kind of thinking about how the Rangers might try and work him in here if they do decide to call him up to the NHL. Of course, he's going to participate in training camp. We'll see how he performs. But you have to assume that another summer of really good practices and another really good training camp period, there's a good chance that he does get called up here. But where do you think he fits in? I mean, obviously, he probably starts out on the fourth line, has to work his way up. But do you think that this is a player of this caliber can make a really quick transition? Do you expect him to be one of those prospects who kind of steps in and instantly makes an impact on that fourth line?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty much ready for the NHL. I think we were making the argument at the beginning of this season that he was pretty much ready for the NHL, and you kind of touched upon it where there was like that weird, very specific rule where if he were to be on the Rangers throughout this season that just finished, we wouldn't have been able to send him down to the AHL. So it's kind of just like if we were to keep him on the roster, he would be kind of stuck there. If he ended up disappointing us a little bit, there would be really not much to do besides trade him. But I think it all worked out perfectly in the end where he got another full year of development down in the OHL. He's excelled amazingly. And now we have the opportunity to call him up to the Rangers where we have high hopes for him, and just like knock on wood, if it goes wrong, we wouldn't be just trapped with him there on the roster where we would be able to send him down to the AHL for more development. But as for where I see him on the team, I don't even think he would start on the fourth line. I think that would just be an immediate third line start where, I mean, just for a couple of reasons where our fourth line it's already pretty solid. We have Mott, VC, Goudreau. I think they played very well together, especially throughout the playoffs. So I would say they were one of the more solid lines that played the most consistently. So we wouldn't really want to break them up. And then you just look at the openings on the rest of the roster, really, where Tarasenko and Kane most likely gone. We've discussed it in previous episodes where Capo Caco probably going to get the opportunity to move up into the top six. The same with Alexis Lafreniere. So that kind of leaves the wings on the third line both somewhat open right now. And a guy like Othmann, who has shown a lot of potential, and we know that he can make an immediate impact, you really don't want to bury him down on the fourth line, where the fourth line is more of role players, where they're penalty killers, grinders, they're the ones out there to set the tone. And you don't really want to waste Othmann's talent on that. You want to put him on that third line with Philip Hedl and whoever is going to be on the other wing right there, where he's not going to be getting a lot of playing time, like compared to the other guys like Panarin and Kreider and Zibanejad, but he's going to get enough playing time with a very talented center in Philip Hedl, where he can have the ability to get some ice time, make an immediate impact, and really just get a jump start to his NHL career.
I think this is good to tie in. You just mentioned him potentially playing there alongside Philip Hedl. We were discussing recently that the Rangers, we did an episode about the kid line, and the Rangers are probably going to have to shake up the kid line, and it's probably not going to stay intact this upcoming season. Realistically, we think there's a good chance that Capo Caco maybe jumps all the way up to the first line. So thinking about it from this kind of different perspective, Rangers could kind of form Kid Line 2.0. Just throw Brennan Othmann on the third line with Hedl and Lafreniere while moving up Kako, seeing how Kako performs up with some of those veterans, and maybe Othmann develops alongside Lafreniere and Hedl, and that could be a recipe for success. What are your thoughts on that, just kind of forming V2 of the Kid Line here?
I mean, it's something I've never thought of before, but it could work. Kako, out of the kids, he's the second oldest. Philip Hedl is the oldest. But I'd be more than willing to see it happen. It's worked once in the past, and I don't see why it wouldn't work again in the future. Where Filipino is at the point of his career where he's still extremely young. He's like I think 24 years old, but that's still a very young age for someone in the NHL. And Lafreniere is getting older. He's inching closer to breaking out. So if there is one line that could work really well for Brennan Othmann, you don't want to just immediately throw him on the superstar line alongside like Kreider and Zibanejad. Give that to a guy like Kako who has that top line experience and has played with them before, and give Othmann kind of like a nice, easy transition into the NHL, playing alongside guys who are closer to his age and maybe have a more similar playing style to him. So I think it very well could work out perfectly like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a really exciting way to get him acclimated, get him filled into onto the lines. Because as you mentioned, maybe want to save that fourth line for those grinders, those depth pieces, and develop somebody on the third line. I think that's where Brennan Othmann probably fits in, is right there on that third line. I think playing alongside some, the kids who aren't really kids anymore. We'll keep calling them the kid line, but Filipino, as you mentioned, 24 years old. How much of a kid is he truly? And also, same thing with Lafreniere. These guys have been in the NHL for a couple of seasons now. And I think that it makes sense here to kind of have these young guys who are also experienced with postseason experience and everything, and Hedel and of course Lafreniere to play alongside Othmann. I think that would be a really good way to get him prepared for the pro game and really get him acclimated with the rest of the line. So that's kind of what I'm rooting for. I'm hoping that that's the case. And as we know, maybe one of the kids is gone this offseason. NHL offseasons get pretty crazy. We always hear trade rumors. We know that, restricted free agents aren't always going to have their contract offers matched. So we'll see what happens with all of the kids and with all of the players on the Rangers in general. But one thing that I am certain of, I feel pretty confident that Brennan Othmann's going to earn himself a roster spot this upcoming season, and I'm really excited to watch him play. We know that the hype train was really starting to build up last year. The Rangers had to make a tough choice. It was either NHL or OHL, no AHL. Sent him down to the OHL to develop one more year. But after a really impressive showing over in the OHL, have to assume that he's going to be ready for this upcoming season. So I'm excited to see what Othmann provides. But Eric, before we wrap here, of course, tempering the expectations, don't want to talk about this guy like he's the second coming of Christ. But what do you think that he could do in this upcoming rookie season for him in the NHL? How big of an impact do you think this player could make? And do you envision him being one of those guys who kind of could potentially burst onto the scene as a rookie?
I mean, yeah, I think he has the potential to have an immediate impact where, you look at all of the kids just in general, where really not any of them made an immediate impact. I think the biggest one definitely was Capo Caco, where when he came over to the NHL and we drafted him second overall, he wasn't used to the like North American style of play. It was more fast paced, heavier hitting. The rink size was different, and it's like still to this day, you're still seeing Kako adjust like all these years later still. And then you look like at a guy like Othmann, who's played in the OHL, which is kind of similar. He's played alongside a lot of NHL players throughout the World Juniors and stuff like that. So I think it's one of those guys where he's not a huge name player. I mean, he's the Rangers' top prospect, in my opinion. I think most people would agree with that, but he's not like a huge name in the NHL. It's not like Connor McDavid coming over to play. So there really won't be too much pressure on his shoulders to just come out there and have like 100-point season in his first ever season. I think it's really just up to him. Go out there, play the hockey that he normally plays, and I think the results will just come following that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. But I will say, I mean, he was a first round 16th overall pick, 2021. I think the Rangers definitely have high expectations for him. Not saying they have expectations for him to make a huge impact immediately, but I think that this is a player, especially considering the success that he just had in the OHL, there are good long-term expectations for Brennan Othmann. So the sooner that they get him up into the NHL, get him on these lines, the better, in my opinion. So I'm thrilled to see what he does provide with the team, and I'm really excited for this entire offseason. And of course, as you all know, we will be updating you on every significant move that the New York Rangers make right here on Fireside Rangers. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Leave a like if you did enjoy this episode, and comment your thoughts on it down below in the comment section. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.